Well, it's that time of year again where some lawmaker somewhere, video games are bad, we gotta do something about them. And this year it's Pennsylvania is trying to tax video games again, because this isn't the first time. Oh, I'm sorry, tax violent video games. Sorry, they fixed it this time. It's violent video games that they're trying to tax this time. Anyway, so lawmakers in Pennsylvania are looking to impose a big tax on mature video games. Under a bill introduced in the state's General Assembly, any game with an M or AO rating would be subject to a 10% tax. That tax revenue would go towards a fund that is to enhance the safety measures in Pennsylvania school districts because reasons. Anyway, this is the second time the bill introduced by Rep. Christopher B. Quinn has been introduced into the Assembly. It made its first appearance last October. M-rated games tend to be the biggest sellers in the video game world. Franchise, including Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and Assassin's Creed, typically carry the rating, which advertises parents that the content is suitable for players over the age of 17. I'll get into my thoughts here in a second. Anyway, Quinn's rationale for the bill seems to be the common fear that violent video games result in real-world violence, an argument that industry opponents have been making for nearly 20 years. Donald Trump made the same argument last year, and the National Rifle Association has regularly made the same argument. I don't know about the NRA. Maybe they have, and I just don't remember it. Anyway, the fear escalates to the point that California attempts to restrict the sale of violent video games to children in 2005. The Supreme Court in 2011 struck down the law. Experts, though, say that they have found no link between games and real-world violence. As a video game researcher and someone who has done scholarships on mass homicide, let me state very empathically, yeah, my reading skills suck. Anyway, empathetically, anyway, there is no good evidence that video games or other media contribute even a small way to mass homicides or any other violence among youth, said Chris Ferguson, a professor of psychology and criminal justice at Texas A&M, who have studied the effects of games violence for years. The proposal, officially called House Bill Number 109, has been referred to the PA House Representatives and Finance Committee. Blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Oh my gosh! And then there's this video that's playing. It says stuff. 43.4 billion worth of video games sold last year, I guess. Anyway, so let's get into this. Where I live, there's already a 10% tax. Having another 10% tax on top of the already 65 and some change that I got to pay for a video game is just ludicrous. I'm totally against that, no matter what state it is. I don't know what Pennsylvania's tax rate is, but guess what? The article is right when it sits there and says that the contents is suitable for players over the age of 17. That's why it's rated M, because an M rating is 17 plus, and an AO, if you don't know what that is an adult-only rating. There's very few of those games that actually happen, that I'm aware of, other than maybe titles on Steam. But as for here in the U.S., They're very rare. There's not a whole lot of adult-only rating video games out there, but there are hundreds of M-rated games because just about everything, especially the popular titles like Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, Battlefield, Assassin's Creed, and several other games carry the M-rated tag for 18+. But why do you need to tax it? Their fear is apparently the same fear that always happens to be the rational thinking part, if you want to call it rational thinking, for why they want to do anything with these violent videos games, is because they feel that they are the one reason that things like school shootings and other things happen. Is because people play too many violent video games, and you'd be hard-pressed to find any mass shooting that has happened and not find that they have owned a copy of something, because it always will eventually go to that for like a split second every time. And he owned a copy of Grand Theft Auto on his Xbox One or his PS2, or he owned a copy of Call of Duty and he was writing that he was practicing using Battlefield on how to properly aim his gun and blah 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 yada yada. Come on, people, seriously. The people who want to sit there and claim that crap have either one, A, never played a video game, B, have never played a video game and or never shot an actual weapon in their life. But seriously, you can pick up Call of Duty and you can pick up your weapon of choice, say it's the P90 or something, and you can see him in the game reloading it or whatever and stuff like that. But and you point it and you shoot it, but that compared to a real life P90 are two different worlds. I'm sorry, as somebody who's actually shot in things like the M16 and the carbine and a few others, there's a world of difference between the real world variant of these weapons and shooting it in a video game. In a video game, I press one button, it does everything for me. I don't have to worry about jams. I don't have to worry about actually putting it in. I don't have to worry about ejecting, the magazine and properly getting the other magazine in the right way. I don't have to worry about anything. The weight of the gun is a non-factor as well, because that changes things when whether or not you can actually properly hold steady the weight of said weapon and pull the trigger or squeeze the trigger and fire it. But heck, even apparently Donald Trump made the same argument, and I guess the NRA has too somewhere along the way, and they are 100% wrong. I'm sorry, they are wrong. There have been several studies throughout the years on this. And if you look at the study, there are some things to look at when you look at these studies. How long they actually did this and what they were using to gauge, what games they were using to gauge this sort of stuff. Because the last one, it's been a long time since I've really read any of these studies, but the last big one I looked at, and I can't remember where it was. I want to say it was Columbia or something, University, Columbia, I don't know, where they did a study and it lasted for like a year or two, right? And they had these people do different things. You had a control group and all that good stuff, and you had a group who would play things like Halo, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, and anything else that you could try and lump into the violent video game category. And then they had a group who would play things like Tetris, The Sims, World of Warcraft, and more modern, other things like that. And then you would have a group that played somewhat older titles like Doom, Tetris. I know I mentioned Tetris already, but they were separate groups. Pac-Man and Hexen and Quake, old Quake, and things like that. And they compiled all this information, and they came to the conclusion that those people who were playing the violent video games were actually less violent than when they came into play. Meanwhile, other people who were playing, say, older, harder games, especially even if it was something non-violent, like Pac-Man or Tetris, which I'm sure somebody out there, if they wanted to make the argument that they are violent video games, they probably could. I mean, especially with the viciousness of Pac-Man eating those ghosts and other stuff. Anyway, but those people tend to be a little bit more angry when they left and they were done after playing those games versus the people who were playing, say, Call of Duty or something, or Grand Theft Auto. And meanwhile, it fluxed with the other groups as well. Whether or not they were more angry at this or that, depending really on the challenge rating of said game, is really what it came down to. The harder the game, the more aggravated and angry people became with it. Hence why a lot of games are so simple nowadays, and I hate it. Anyway, but those who played the more violent video games turned out they were less violent after leaving. They showed noticeably decreased levels of different chemicals and things in the brain that made them, over time, less likely to get unhinged and go trying to stab random people in the street or anything after playing violent video games for a longer period of time. And, that was a very interesting study to look, because it took like a year or so, a long time, span of time to actually compile these results. Meanwhile, if you look at other studies that come to the conclusion that violent video games breeds violence, they're usually studies that are done within a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two. They're always playing older titles for the most part, because when you look at the games they examine, they're listing things like Doom, Quake, and Tetris, and older, harder games, Contra and things like that, Castlevania, older titles for like the NES, the Super NES, the old 95 DOS box PC era, and things like that. And they came to the conclusion after their very short study that these games have a habit of making people more violent, which is what they come to, but they honestly, in my opinion, have done it wrong, because they're not studying these people at a long period of time. They're also using old media that inherently is a lot harder to deal with. I mean, seriously, you take somebody, if I was to take, say my oldest right now, I know he can play Fortnite. I've seen him do it. He's alright. Not the best, not the worst. He enjoys it, has fun with it. But if I was to sit him down and say, here, play Doom, old Doom, 95, Windows 95 Doom, he probably couldn't. He's going to get aggravated at the fact that he can't look up, that he can't shoot at an angle. What is this? What are these? Why do I have to find these keys? And all this other stuff. And he's probably going to get very aggravated with it and angry with the game itself, because it is an older game and it is a lot harder than putting somebody down and going, alright, here's Grand Theft Auto, here's the story that leads you by the hand, there's way markers everywhere of where you need to go, you don't have to really think, read, or figure it out on your own, it's all right there. Versus the games of yesterday, and he may be a master, at playing the new Grand Theft Auto game. Have no problem with it, but he can't get past, the first areas of, or the second world or whatever of Doom. And that's a huge difference. If you're going to sit there and do a study on violent video games and try and figure out if people are inherently more violent. Now, there's a market for those older games. People like myself love those games. Those are the games we grew up on. And for us, it was a different story. If you were to take people back then during the fact that these games are new and set them down and do this study, I guarantee you would have a vastly different outcome of these shorter studies. Not this longer one, but of these shorter studies whether or not violent video games breed violence, because then you're taking a demographic who grew up on puzzle solving and exploring worlds and everything else, and where they didn't have waypoints and they had to read, the quest that was given to them, and it says over here in the hinterlands there are these yetis that you've got to go kill, and you're like, okay, well, where are the hinterlands? Oh, that's on another continent. How do I get there? Oh, I can take a boat from here to there and then run up here to there, and then I'll run through this area, and that should get me where I need to be. Meanwhile, in today's, you get that. You're here, click here, and this is going to bring up the map exactly where you need to be, and it's going to show you the radius of where these monsters happen to be. Oh, okay, well, that's on the other continent. Well, alright, I'm just going to go over here to, the main city and take a teleport over to that side of the world, and I guess I'll just fly on down there on the flight path and get right there. Oh, wait, there's a portal that takes me really close to that. I'll just go ahead and pop in there. I'm over there. And you've done it just like that. I mean, it's a lot easier when the game holds your hand and points you in the right direction. So when it comes to a lot of these studies, because those other studies, the shorter ones, are the ones that people like to, point at. And I remember, years ago reading these studies and going, you people are doing the study all wrong. There is no way that you can justify anything, whether or not they're inherently violent or not, after playing this game, just by watching them play for 30 minutes for 2 weeks at a time, or 30 minutes a day for 2 weeks at a time. You need a larger sample, you need a larger play window, you need more modern games in order to actually do that, which, when you've got a study who is trying to find out if a game is inherently violent, I honestly do feel that they purposely, if they're trying to come with the outcome, yes, games are violent, do it in the worst possible way, just to make it seem like it's a lot worse than what it is. Anyway, I've been rambling on about studies and video game violence. Point is, 10% tax, gotta go, no way. Shoot it down, Pennsylvania. This is horrible. You guys should not have to be paying extra tax on your violent video games, because when it really comes down to it, parents can't parent. And that was really the whole point to this, was me going on a tangent about parents' inability to properly parent their children. And I went off into studies and everything else in the world. Anyway, let me know down in the comments below, are you for a tax or are you against a tax, and why? I'll talk to you later. See ya.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment, smash that like button, and always subscribe for more. And of course, there are other videos floating around somewhere on the screen, so click one of those and see if you can find something that suits your fancy. Till then, I'll see you later. Bye.